Black Mirror, Season 3, Episode 5, Men Against Fire. Welcome back to another Floppylegss YouTube video. I really appreciate you coming on through. Of course, we're firing through all of Season 3 of Black Mirror, and then we're going to be getting into Season 4, 5, and 6 very, very soon. So make sure you sub so you don't miss a review, and make sure you're watching along with me. If you haven't watched these episodes in years, put it on, then watch this review and see if you agree with me at the end. Spoiler warning ahead. Starting off with the story of Men Against Fire. We were introduced to Stripe, who's on his first mission in the army, in the military, to embark on taking down some roaches. We don't know what roaches are, but they're vermin. They attack villages, they steal food, and yada, yada, yada. Just want to put out here, before we get anywhere further than this character you see on the screen right now, the worst accent I've ever heard in my life. I don't care if this person's actually American or whatever. Like, the actual voice that he produces from his mouth is terrible. Awful.
Yo, how many roaches you got left out here? A couple of 1,000? A couple of 100, if that? I mean, back home we had millions, man.
What? Listen to it. We see them enter this village. We hear that there's somebody around the village that they know has been potentially, allegedly, keeping roaches hidden in his house, because roaches have to be exterminated and eliminated. We don't want roaches around. They're really bad. They're presented to us. They're evil. You know, they scare kids. The kid's frightened for his life. And we see them enter this guy's house and they get talking. I just want to really just address straight away what I feel like the metaphor here is straight away. It very much reminiscent of 1939 to 1945 in a certain European nation with a certain horrible leader that very much attacked a certain group of people. You know, yeah, it definitely is that. I actually thought this scene right here where she's talking to him as they're walking through the house felt very similar to like an Inglourious Bastards, where they are in the house and the people are hidden underneath the floorboards. But anyway, they enter this house, they're going through the different rooms, they get into a cupboard, they see there's a back door of the cupboard, and lo and behold, there are some roaches. They have animalistic features. They look like monsters. They look like Voldemort. I don't know how to describe them. You can see him on the screen. Stripe's first mission, he's struggling, he gets rid of one, he's got a really strong battle with this other one, and then he ends up taking them out as well, and they are victorious in taking out some roaches, and they capture a person that's been keeping them safe and hoarded in his house. But during Stripe's battle with this roach, they have a little device. It's like Men in Black, you know, but it's green and it doesn't really make that noise. It goes and then there's like because obviously I've not spoken about, but they obviously have an implant in their brain where they can see things in front of them, which is quite a cool element. Again, a lot of these elements aren't too dissimilar to like other ones. As we get going, we see maybe some similarities. Like this one isn't too dissimilar to like maybe An Entire History of You or something like that, obviously used in very different ways, but an implant where they can do these things. But of course that green caused Stripe to have a faulty implant. You know, things are glitching as he's trying to do some training and things like that, and he goes to the medic, and I found this kind of funny. The medic gives him like a recalibration beep beep screen, and he then gets told to go to a therapist. I think he's like the head honcho, it turns out at the end, but he is the therapist, and he's talking to him about what he saw and what happened. And he's basically just implying that he's having these feelings and these emotions because of it's the first time he's taken down a roach, you know, so he's clearly just having maybe some post-traumatic stress. And what I found really interesting here, he doesn't prescribe him anything. He prescribes him a sex dream. Can't put it any other way. And then it got me thinking, like, is that like what they do here? Because obviously when he's dreaming every night, he's envisioning this woman, and then of course he ends up having a sex dream with her. Because earlier in the episode when they're training, Raymond talks about how her hoo-ha is twitching because she hasn't had a kill of a roach in a while. So it's like, do they get rewarded with sex dreams when they kill a roach? It kind of felt like that a little bit. So anyway, he goes to sleep after being prescribed this. He's in for a treat, and it ends up exaggerating, and it all glitches. It ends up being like 7 of the woman. It's like, I'm sure he's not complaining, but it gets really like manic and crazy. It's like glitching, and he wakes up. You know, he got blue-balled. It's basically just an exaggerated lucid dream, and he's like, why did I have to wake up? No. Anyway, he wakes up, and he looks around the room, and as we've seen him, when he's asleep, he's twitching, like his fingers like. And he's looking at every single person in there, all the soldiers, they're all twitching. It's like they're robots, you know, they're just in their sleep, like, you know, they're all twitching and probably all experiencing the same prescribed sex dream because they've accomplished their roach killing goal. They go out on another mission, and at this point we still don't know why they're after roaches. It's just been told to us that that's what they do. Our leader of the team gets killed by a roach that has a rifle. How they got their hands on a rifle? Mental. They got a drone. They end up going inside, and this is where we see our lead character Stripe. His implant fades. It finally disconnects. It stops working, and he's able to smell. He picks up the grass. He's able to smell, and then we realize that how much this thing is maybe masking other senses and emotions and feelings that we were unaware of before. He's able to smell. He's like, have you realized you've never been able to smell? It's like really, really interesting. He's dealing with this. They end up entering the building, and he sees someone with a bat, and he's like, they're human, civilian. He's like, leave, get out of here. There's roaches here. You need to get out of here. And they look confused, and then they end up leaving, and then bang, Raymond gets the kill. She looks at him like, what? In this moment, when you first watch it, you might see this as Raymond killed crazy. She hasn't killed anything in ages, and she just wants to kill anyone. She's lost it. So then maybe you think, Stripe is trying to stop her. Obviously, this is on a rewatch, so I knew what the story was here. They end up entering another room, and this is where you do see it, because we see it through Raymond's perspective. They're all roaches, they're screaming, but then we see it from Stripe's perspective, and they're screaming for help, and they're saying, please no, all this stuff. She's murdering, and then he saves these two roaches. I think it's a younger woman and a kid. Knocks her out. They flee. He's been shot. They end up in like the forest underground sort of base that this roach has, very like run down, tiny. Raymond wakes up and is able to. I like this. When I watched it, I was like, how's she doing this? But then I remember they very much told us at the beginning that she was a hunter in her previous, like when she was younger. She would go out hunting. She'd hunt deers and things like that. So she's using her tracking skills through hunting to find him and track him down. She does that. She gets rid of and kills the two roaches that she sees that he's now friends with. Even in this moment when the roach is talking, the woman is talking to him, she doesn't necessarily say what happened. She just said they did DNA tests, and then after that they painted us out to be vermin that had to be removed from the bloodline. We don't find out truly what the reasoning is until the next scene, where we see Stripe is now in this prison cell, or in this white room, like a psychiatric sort of like ward, and he's in there and he's like dealing with the fact that it's all a lie. The therapist comes back in and tells him all, and this is where you realize why they've been doing this all along. They basically did loads of tests at one point in time after the war. They didn't say what war. It's definitely far in the future. And he talks about how there are people with a predisposition for diseases, cancers. They have a predisposition to be criminals and did all these things. They basically have bad genetics that will pass down and cause more of those things to stay in the gene pool. And their job is to get rid of them. They don't want them in the bloodline. They want to be better and thrive as a human race. So they want to remove the negatives in the bloodline. And Stripe doesn't agree with this. He doesn't think it's right. And then I find it interesting that the therapist talks about like how people in the military back in the day, only like 15 to 20% would shoot, because we are on average, an empathetic species, us humans. And we don't want to take another human's life. So being able to portray them as something animalistic or as a monster makes it easier to do the act. And it's really interesting. It's really messed up, but it's really interesting how that story is revealed. He then gets his eyesight taken away from him for a bit, because he has the implant in him still, so he has control over him in that sense, and then gets replayed his memory of his first roach kill, and now he has it in full reality rather than the masked version. He can smell, he can hear, he can see them, more importantly, and he sees it all play out, and he's screaming. He can't believe what he's done, because what he does is really horrific when you watch it as the reality. When he's killing the monster, it's a little bit desensitized because it's a monster, but when you see it's a human being pleading for their life, that boy that he multiple times slashes, you see it in its full horrific glory, and it's like he can't deal with the fact of what he's just done. And then he says, you have two choices. I either reset your implant, or I leave that playing in a cell for you could be incarcerated, and that will play over and over and over again. He lets out a tear, and you can see he's going to concede. And then we cut to him being dropped off, being a welcome home message on a house. And I remember when I first watched this, I think I didn't get it. I was 16 years old, let me off. But now I get it. He ends up, the reality is a rundown neighborhood. It's a more rundown house. There aren't any signs, but from his master implant, it paints it out as this beautiful thing, you know, American dream, a lovely house and your wife waiting for you at home saying welcome back, and he stands there and he cries, and it's like a double meaning to us as an audience with the knowledge of what everything is. It's like he's crying at like the fact that he did concede and he did get the implant re-established, and he's crying in that sense. And then in the other sense of what he is seeing, he's seeing such beauty, he's happy and relieved to be home, you know, from the military, and he's crying in that sense as well. So moving over to the concept of this episode, this is what I really want to talk about, okay? The main thing I just want to get off the bat, as I mentioned, it's very much reminiscent of a 1939 to 1945 German, you know, thing. I don't want to say the name. I don't know if that's like gets demonetized, but you know what I'm referencing. And I think this whole story is very much just telling you about how propaganda, spreading a message about people in a negative light, can mask your perception of them. It's a very exaggerated version of that, you know, instead of just like media and propaganda and messages being said to you, it's an implant. But it can make you demonize a certain group of people by what messages you see constantly about them. Whatever that group may be, you know, as I said, it is obviously very reminiscent to that time, but, you know, it happens all the time. There's so many horrific examples. But yeah, this is a prime example of that. You know, the propaganda is the implant, and now they see them as animals and monsters. But that's because they've been pushed this narrative in their head. Same way that people were pushed the narrative about people and have been in this group and that group. You know, it's a horrific thing, that propaganda, and people can manipulate you to see people in a certain light. And then when he's finally able to remove the propaganda and actually talk to the person, you know, A, he realizes that they're not what they've been portrayed as, but B, he's able to see that they're just like him, they're human beings. You know, I think that idea of like the mask being taken off was brilliant. You know, it makes you see them as what they truly are. They're human beings, and like that, in that sense, this concept playing out this way is a brilliant message, you know, to people that maybe have a masked view of certain groups of people. Watch this episode, and how can you not see that? How can you not see that you maybe have been swayed or been made to look at people in a certain way? Like, outside of that, the concept, of course, is the technology, and I thought in the way that they use it in the military and things like that was quite cool. Like the fact that it could give you this whole view of the house just by like one shot of a thing. They got their messages and their tasks through their eyes, and he's like seeing it. That was cool. But yeah, the actual use of this concept is very dark, of course. So it's hard for me to say it's really cool, but I think it is an interesting concept that's explored in this episode. One thing though about the concept, because I think the concept includes why they are killing these roaches. And I was like, when I first watched it, I didn't know this, and the shock was very like, whoa. When I knew what this twist was, I didn't feel like, whoa, when I watched it as much. But when I watched it, I couldn't help but feel like the justification for them doing this isn't really valid. Like, of course, if we had an ideal world, we would remove all the cancers in the world. We would remove all these ailments if we had the option to. But no, you can't justify this. Like, I wanted it to be a thing where, like, in previous episodes, you could be like, oh, is it this or that? I don't know which side to agree with. In this one, I'm agreeing with Stripe. Like, what the flip? You can't be doing this. You know, I wanted it to be something where it was like something a lot deeper, a lot like, oh, they're doing it for this reason. But they're humans, but all that reason's so strong. This reason wasn't strong enough. And then also, if this is the reason they want to kill all the roaches, if we're in this futuristic, high technological world, you're telling me that you can build a tech where it's an implant where they can do all these things, but there's no one building a technology, or there's not already a technology that can deal with those ailments? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, you know, he says all of the things like MS, cancer, predispositions for this, that, and the other. Of course, they are objectively like negative things. We don't necessarily, in an ideal world, those things wouldn't exist, and people would all be free of those ailments, and we'll all be dandy. But you're telling me in a world where we can have an implant, it can do this, that, and the other. You're telling me there's no technology that can deal with those ailments. Do you know what I mean? Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, oh, okay, yes, these people have the DNA that and the genetic predisposition to pass down a cancer. But we're living in this futuristic world where this implant exists. Surely there's a technology that can just deal with the cancers now? No? Am I being very naive? It just felt like, come on, like, surely that's not a loophole, but like a question mark about the episode. Then a bigger question mark about this episode is when he sees the therapist first off and he's saying all these problems that he's having. Do you not think the therapist would go through his memories that he clearly says he has access to watch in its full glory? Horrific glory, sorry. Would he not go through them? Like, he just says, we're so sorry, we didn't pay attention enough, like your thing was bad. But surely he would go through the memory, see the like the green Men in Black thing. Surely he would look through it. If it, you know, it felt like a very like un-Black Mirror-esque mishap. It felt like surely he would just look at the memories, found that, then you cut off like half the episode, and they've reimagined his implant straight at the bat, and it's fine. Characters in this episode, I want to stress this so massively to you. These are some of the worst characters that Black Mirror have ever done. These are some of the most boring characters ever. I don't know if they've done that for a reason, as in like they're just supposed to represent these military soldiers. I don't know. I didn't care for Stripe. I felt bad for him at the end, but I didn't care for him. Especially when you just come out of San Junipero. I know this is completely different stories, but I think what I love about Black Mirror episodes is when you care for the characters within it and you love the characters within it. I can give a toss about any of them. Genuinely, and I know that might be harsh, but I genuinely did not care for any of these characters. Like when the military leader gets shot and dies, I didn't feel anything in that moment because I didn't get a backstory to her. I didn't know anything about her, this, that, and the other. However, the characters that you do feel for are the roaches, because you find out the backstory about them and like how they've been mistreated and presented in such a negative light to us as well. We had the mask on us as well. We saw them as bad, and then we realized we were bad for wanting them to be removed because they were monsters, but they weren't monsters. That's what I'll give you the props for, and I think that's all they were really going for. But the hunter girl, Stripe, the therapist guy was a bit dark, but like none of them really hit home for me whatsoever. Let me know if you agree in the comments down below. The twist, I will say, was good. Like even watching it again, like you can still see how people could watch it and be like, oh, Raymond's gone bad when she shoots the civilian to us. The reasoning at the end, like this is why we're getting rid of these roaches, was like a revelation, like wow. But again, I want to reiterate, I wanted it to be something where like I would have a moral debate in my head, be like, oh god, moral debate. Maybe it's just because maybe I don't see it. Maybe people have had a moral debate about this episode. Like again, in an ideal world, those ailments wouldn't exist. But we're never going to unalive the people that have the disposition to pass that gene on. We're never going to do, like, what? But yeah, I wanted that sort of element of the twist. Like I was waiting for it again, like, oh, I can't remember what the roaches actually, like, why are they doing this again? I was like, oh, let it be good. Let it be good. And this episode could go up a few points. Like actually leaving me being like, oh, I hear why you're doing it. I don't hear it. I just don't. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about the twist and this episode as a whole. It's of course the end of the episode where I tell you what I rated this episode out of 10. Season 3 has had absolute heaters so far, and I can let you know that Men Against Fire is a 6.5 out of 10. Yeah, it doesn't live up to the standards of the others. It's probably one of the worst episodes so far in the whole of Black Mirror that I've watched, as in the rewatch. So from season 1 to season 3, this is the worst episode I've seen, other than the Waldo moment. The less said about that, the better. But yeah, it just didn't land. And I think, as I've reiterated already, it is that characters segment. I need to feel something. I need to feel empathetic. I need to feel for the characters that you're portraying to me this whole episode. I didn't really care for Stripe. I didn't. You didn't give me enough about his story. They showed us the very quick consent form thing that he did, that video, and he's obviously very different to what he is now. But like, you didn't give me that backstory to him. You know, he goes back home to this rundown house. What was that rundown house like? What was his history? What was his upbringing? I guess that wasn't the point of the story. The point of the story is the roaches and how, you know, how propaganda can cause you to mask your views on people. But I just felt like it didn't land to the fullest degree. Make sure you leave a comment down below of what you rate this episode out of 10. And please, check out the Twitch. Subtle propaganda I've left in the background. What am I doing? I've been Floppyleggs, and I'll see ya when I see ya.